Hey, welcome back. This is Jared Cohen of cpbgrowth.com. Another episode of Preventative Practice, Week 3, CrossFit Games Open, 16.3. I don't know about you, but I'm very excited about this one. Personally, this plays in my wheelhouse, so I'm excited to be able to expand the thinking about movement prep. This should be a little shorter than the previous videos because we should be able to build on some of the stuff from the previous videos and play a little more point specific here, and you'll see what I mean. Without further ado, controlled articular rotations. This is going to become a mainstay of everything that I'm talking about. It's a really important approach to making sure that you're taking all of your main joints through full rotational range of motion at your outer limits, and treat this as a very mindful introduction to your training session. So when we're talking about full body, I'm starting with the head and neck. I move to the entirety of the spine. I then go with my shoulder blades. I then go with the rotator cuff of the shoulder, elbow, wrist, hips, knees, ankles. I challenge you to really start zooming in your concentration. For instance, I start with my head and neck. Can I block everything else out and just zero in on this stimulus of head and neck rotation? Okay, what you are likely to find is you get through like 1.5, and all of a sudden your brain gets overloaded with all the things that we're constantly thinking about. Especially if this is day of, you're nervous. Try and quell some of the nerves by being very point specific about what you're doing. And as you can see here, just one set, 2 full rotations per side / direction. Obviously with my head and neck, I only have one head and neck, so you can see I would just do 2 in one direction, 2 in the other direction. For more on that, check out the playlist from the Preventative Practice page. There's only one playlist, and that'll take you from head all the way down to the ankle. Okay. Last week I showed you a common mistake I see in people not getting full internal rotation of the shoulder cars. I want to just highlight the hip cars for a second here before we move on. So one rotation going forward of the hip controlled articular rotations. I bring my hip into flexion, and then what I see a lot of people do is they let the knee drop and then just already start internally rotating. So step 2 has to be external rotation. Really going to try and open this up and control this stability. If I need to hold on to something, don't hesitate to do that. And now from here, can I keep that knee up as I internally rotate that hip down, squeeze the butt, come all the way through. Okay? And then if I just reverse that, hip extension, internal rotation, flexion, external rotation. Okay? That would be 1 and 1. I'd have to do 1 more forward, 1 more back to complete that that set. Okay, snatches and bar muscle ups. I'm gonna play big on how we improve that hip flexion every time we need to get to the bar. It's 7 minutes. That's a lot of bending over and picking something up, and we're gonna get smoked much sooner if we don't have good hip flexion capacity to be able to continually go through that repetition. And then hip extension, I want to show you something you probably haven't seen before, especially in the CrossFit space, that is going to prep not only that dynamic finish of the snatch, but also what we want to have take place in being able to get that quick transition for the bar muscle up. So hip flexion, banded, med ball, down dog. What does all that mean? I've got my band. I'm not going to thread it through itself so that I have 2 holes. One for one leg, one for another. I don't want this too high. Okay? Now, this is helping me not only get that hip back in the socket, but really cue where that hinge is. And this becomes a very important kinesthetic piece when I think about the speed of that muscle up transition. So the med ball helps me now tie in the overhead position. Okay? Palms are up, which is going to just give me a little bit more stretch of that external rotation. And then you got 2 minutes of being able to inform freestyle this position I have given you. Okay, I would spend some time messing around with the feet a little closer together, and you can work through the length of those hamstrings as you bicycle those heels down. You can explore what that wider position feels like. You can then start taking the hands on the side and use that ball to pull you into some different lateral positions, again, a lot of which we don't hit very often. This is a very nice global mobilization warm-up piece. Obviously biasing the hip and hip flexion here, but we tie in a lot with the shoulders if we're multitasking appropriately. Okay. Part number 2, hip extension. We're going to use this stretch called the diagonal stretch, which I believe was pretty much popularized by Ido Portal. And a couple shout outs here. I was introduced to this by Cody Sunkel, who is a really awesome movement teacher. Definitely check out his Instagram page. There's tons of great content. And then another movement coach, Devin McCole, who is also a functional range conditioning practitioner. And I've taken some of their ideas on this stretch to incorporate within the context of 16.3 prep. So what does the diagonal stretch look like? I'm not going to be too concerned about the width of this lunge. So pretty much just put yourself into a lunge. Okay, you can even think just kind of split jerk position. And then what's going to happen here is the opposite side, right? So if my right leg is back, I'm going to be thinking about how I can touch my back heel with my left arm. Okay? So I'm engaging in thoracic rotation and extension to touch back to that heel. And I want to try and time this here where my knee and hand come down together. Okay, this is a great way to warm up this just core unilateral stability, your control of a position, and not just stretching without that active component, as well as obviously we're prepping some spinal extension, hip extension, thoracic rotation. Okay? You're going to get 10 repetitions. Let's go back here for a sec so we're clear about what we're talking about. 10 repetitions, that was dynamic and static. Static meaning that you're staying in place, dynamic continuing that the repetitions like you saw me demo. This is a variation I saw from Devin McCole, banded dynamic. So we can use a thinner band to make this a little bit more for how Ido Portal has this specifically prescribed. And for that specific prescription, what he's usually looking for is for the front leg to stay extended. Okay? So now I can apply that concept more by having the band to assist me in how much I can lean back. So again, you see the right leg back, okay? And I'm going to reach across with the left side here, trying not to bend that front knee. Okay, and if you can only go to maybe your hamstring or your top of your calf, that's fine. And again, if you need to bend the knee here, I don't really see anything wrong with that. It's just another variation to give you a little bit more room to work into this position. Okay? So again, 10 per side. And the last variation I want to show you is something completely dynamic, which we're going to also tie in some shoulder-controlled articular rotations with. So I'm going to do 10 forward lunges and then 10 reverse. So I lunge. Now I'm going to go with the same side as my front leg. As I come down, flexion, external rotation, internal rotation. I'm going to max out that internal rotation, meaning that my fingernails are going to face my heel as I sit back and reach. Okay? I come back up, I switch, flexion, external rotation. Belly is tight. As I come down, that knee's coming down, I'm going to lean back and reach cross for that heel. Can you take a camera closer to my hand here. So notice where my palm is facing to really, again, max out that internal rotation. Now, if I had to reverse this, leg steps back, same thing. Same side as the front leg. I'm coming through, and I reach, slow, control, squeeze the butt, touch. Okay? Moving on. Muscle up specifics. Some skin the cats, some technical roll throughs, and then I just want to give you a breakdown sense of what are the pieces you need to make sure you have in order for that bar muscle up to come together and look pretty, and obviously executed in a way that the rep actually counts. Okay? So skin the cat. Another way to make sure our shoulders have the appropriate tissue control necessary to work within the speed and time demands that we're going to ask for it within those 7 minutes. I would hang out here for just a little bit to get a greater stretch through the pecs. Notice how I'm totally internally rotated, just like at the end of cars. And then I'm coming back through, nice and slow. Breathe. Okay, that would be 1. I'm going to do a total of 6. One of the big make or break aspects of the bar muscle up is the ability for your hands to move around the bar. You can't be death gripping. You have to think about the bar muscle up much like a snatch, okay? And it's not even necessarily ironic, it's more coincidental that snatches and muscle ups are being paired together. They're both these, as Kelly Starrett would refer to them as category 3 movements. There's this loss of connection moment where I'm moving through space, weightlessness as we refer to it in the weightlifting world, and then one position transitions to another. So a pull goes to a press. And in order to get from that pull to a press, I need my hand to maneuver around the bar, or I'm going to show you this drill on the rings first. So with this roll through, the idea is that I'm starting with the rings more in my fingertips, the kind of front of my hand, and then I finish with it deep in the heel of my palm, particularly the webbing between index and thumb. So you'll watch here, I almost put myself in a skin to cat, and then I roll through, and where do I end up? Okay? Love the hoodie. It shows that full body connection of the head's gonna go where, the spine's gonna go where the head goes. Okay? Some of the common mistakes here, if I'm death gripping, notice I can't get through, right? And so I need to be able to allow that transition and continue the cycle, right? As if you're gonna go into another somersault. Don't stop that short. You got 10 of those. Lastly, the bar muscle up consists of these 4 components. Pullbacks. I encourage you to go back to last week's video, 16.2, and you can just skip to the end where I did a whole portion on pullback stuff for the toes to bar. This is part number 1. So I need to have enough of a pullback to start getting myself horizontal to the bar. Once I get that, part 2, I need to go for the hips. Okay, so I'm starting to get myself horizontal to the bar, but now I need to close the gap between my hips and the bar. In order to close that gap, I'm going to start extending the hips very violently. So now, pull back plus hips. Okay, and you can see I'm almost touching the bar. Now, how do I touch the bar? After I get that hip extension, the row. Okay, so now pull back hips and row. Pull back hips and row. And putting it all together. Once I've gotten that row, I got to turn over. That's my roll through coming into play. So all 4 pieces. Notice how I really emphasize almost going into another sit-up. There's a bunch of great videos that have been done in the past, particularly Carl Paoli. Freestyle Connection has broken this down in so many ways, and that's where my best understanding of this has come from. So you can check out his work for more detail on this. My purpose here was really just to make sure you were seeing where these elements may be lacking in what's happening. Too many people think about the bar muscle up as a chest to bar pull-up. If you're thinking about it that way, it's never going to work. It needs to be more of a row movement, i.e. how you're getting horizontal with the bar. Last points, I would also check out last week's video for going over some of the prep for the internal rotation of the shoulder, that sleeper stretch, so that you're better working this range of motion to turn over that barbell. And like I said before, use the various videos in an integrated manner, because there's stuff I'm sure that resonates for you more in one than another. And then now I've given you some pieces where you can actually start taking your own ingredients that I've given you and making your own recipes. I want to build that self-sufficiency for you. That being said, thank you so much for watching 3 weeks in a row. It's been a blast. Train with purpose. I'm Jared Cohen. Go kick some ass. That's Taka.
Taka.